I imagined him as Ben Shapiro. I imagined Rhysand as Ben Shapiro because they depicted him with like dark features, and I was like, who do I not like? Ben Shapiro. And so I imagined this like short, insecure man as Rhysand, and I had to unlearn that. It for the following books.
Welcome back to the Fangirl Field podcast. My name is Olivia.
My name's Tanya.
And we're the podcast where we have an emotional analysis of all the books, movies, shows, all the things that give us all the feelings.
Too many feelings.
It's all the feelings.
And today, my name's typically Tanya, but today I'm Cassian.
And today I am Azriel. We are the bad boys.
And spoiler alert, for this whole episode, we'll be talking about spoilers, which this is a spoiler. Our costumes are a spoiler.
The costumes are a spoiler.
For subsequent books, because we're not in the first book that we're talking about today.
Yeah. And just know that we're going to a party later, so we didn't just dress up like this, but also, why not?
Why not?
Why not? There's nothing wrong with dressing up like this.
Yeah.
It is spooky season, everyone. Ooh. This is like everyone should be dressed up all month.
Well, we've grabbed some questions from. Also, we have like 3 videos. So
we've never been more recorded.
Yeah,
in our lives.
And we've never done this. We're just so used to looking at the camera. So if we get this wrong, sorry in advance.
It'll be fine.
Today we grabbed some questions. We also thought of some questions ourselves, but we grabbed some questions from a site called justleafing.com. MVP, thank you so much. We today are going to talk about the first book of A Court of Thorns and Roses.
A Court of Thorns and Roses.
A Court of Thorns, yeah. What ACOTAR refers to.
Yes, A Court of Thorns and Roses. Yeah, we're talking about the first book, just the first book. Because it's been a while since we read these, so we're going to take these book by book because we have to refresh our memories because it's tough to read them all at once.
They're very long.
They're really long. They're very long. So, I mean, that goes to like our first question. How did you find out about these books, Tanya?
I wonder, a little birdie told me, it was Olivia.
I wonder who was a little birdie. Yes, it was me.
Back in like 2019 or 2020, you told me to read it around the pandemic is when I had my reading renaissance. You had yours in like 2016, 2017, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, Olivia introduced it to me and I just like devoured all 4 or 5. How many ever?
I think there were like 4 books plus a novella.
Yeah.
So there's like 4.5, I think. Yeah.
How about you? How'd you get into it?
I read them in 2017. I read them after Throne of Glass, and I found out about them from BookTube. This was like pre-TikTok era. There was such a thing as like Bookstagram, but it was really just like I would follow these YouTubers who I still follow to this day, and they would just like share reviews of their favorite books, and that's how I found out about A Court of Thorns and Roses.
Yeah.
And I think like the second book had just come out at the time that I read it. And then the third book was coming out later that year, like 2017.
Okay.
So
OG is an OG ACOTAR.
I'm not an OG actor.
So I am curious, Olivia, what were your initial impressions of the book?
It's tough. That's a tough one. ACOTAR is like, we have to break this down, like why we're breaking it down into different books, because it is such just like a meaty piece of content in terms of like the culture around it too. So at the time when I read it, it wasn't that like there wasn't a lot of like baggage around it that I think there is now. So I think there's a little bit it's hard for me to remember what my first impressions were because I think it's been shaded by like all the baggage of like late. Like there's just a lot that comes with the ACOTAR universe. But I like ate it up the first time. Like, I enjoyed it. I remember I listened to the audiobooks at like work where we used to work together, and not the best audiobook to listen to.
Very brave, Olivia. Very brave.
Although the first book is not that smutty. It's really not. But there are moments. That was my first encounter reading anything like that. So when it came up in the book, like in the audiobook, and I didn't know it was coming. It was a little bit jarring when you're like at your office and you're like, oh, this feels illegal. Like this feels not good. But I enjoyed them. Like I enjoyed the first book. I gave it 3 stars when I first read it, and then moved on and I gave the second book 4 stars. But yeah, I liked it. Like
she just looked up her Goodreads. That's why
I did. Yeah, I did. It wasn't like I remember exactly what my rating was.
Yeah. Let me remember.
Because I tried to remember even when I read it, and I read it in like April of 2017. Okay. So that was like the exact time. Yeah.
But the before times.
The before times. It was. Yeah. Time. It's crazy. Yeah. What about you?
I wrote down a couple things that I think you agree with.
Yeah.
So like since I read in 2020, I remember it a little bit more than Olivia does. Like, so one thing that we will keep mentioning is that like, what is the plot? Because the thing that we remember most from these books is the characters. We think Sarah J. Maas does a really great job of writing and developing characters, and so we care about the relationships of those characters too. I don't remember what happens. We're just like a cauldron war.
Yeah,
that's it.
Some
like,
cauldron,
yeah.
a war, and a king.
Spoiler alert, because that's later.
Yeah, more spoilers.
Yeah, the first book was a little bit more memorable because it's so different from the other ones. You know what I mean?
I forget the first book a lot. Like I had to read a synopsis, like we both did,
We both
because
had
the
to.
first. I mean, like I really only remember the second book. If I have to like say the books I remember,
Yeah.
it's really just number 2, if that even. But like the first book is such a different world than the other 4 books or 3 books. Or
It's
whatever.
yeah, totally. Well, so that's the thing I remember is that like, so I wrote here, it reminded me of Beauty and the Beast meets Hunger Games.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you don't know that this twist is coming.
No.
When the twist comes, it just ruins your life
Yeah,
a little
it
bit.
does.
You know what I mean?
It does a little. It is an existential crisis a bit.
I remember that like the book is just like candy. It wasn't good writing, and I had to ask my friends like, should I keep going? And my friend Erin specifically was like, Tanya, it's just candy. It's not the best writing. She's not going to win literary awards for her writing, but it's just candy. Just eat it up. We do think it's weird that like ancient fairies want to date a 19-year-old. Like this is a pattern within like fantasy, is that like these ancient beings in Twilight that have been around for hundreds of years want to date like
a 19-year-old girl.
A girl that doesn't have a fully developed brain. So a little bit
weird.
odd.
It is odd.
Last 2 things, just I didn't like Nesta the first book. And then Stockholm Syndrome was a theme throughout this book. It's just like, that's why I knew that Tamlin would be toxic, because there's no reason. The only reason Farrah fell in love with him was because she's stuck.
Yeah. So. I mean, that's the concept of Beauty and the Beast. Like, I never liked Beauty and the Beast because I'm like, why am I in love with this? Like, as if it's me. But like, why? Because it's always self-fulfilling. Yeah. But like, why are we in love with this beast that like trapped us in this house? Like, why is that the plot of this? Like, I never really liked Beauty and the Beast to begin with. So yeah, like, honestly, it makes sense that Tamlin ends up being, spoiler, the bad guy.
The baddie.
Yeah, it makes sense because he's not great. Traps this girl. Yeah, didn't like Nesta. Most people say they didn't like Nesta. I didn't mind her, to be honest.
Oh really?
Yeah, I don't remember having any particular feelings about her when I read it. Yeah. So when people were like, when you guys were reading it, like our friend group, and you had like a lot of reactions towards Nesta, I was like, I was fine with her, honestly. Yeah, I didn't have any issues with her.
I remember in the first book, she's just like ungrateful towards Farrah.
She is.
Like, what is she just like fought bears for food?
She did.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And like, you are ungrateful. But yeah, it wasn't. She wasn't in it that much, to be fair.
No, she wasn't at all. She's the only one who the spell didn't work on. The like enchantment that like Tamlin put on them didn't work on Nesta.
I forget why.
I forget why too.
Tell us.
Yeah, please, audience, tell us. Who knows? There's a reason why anytime we mention ACOTAR, it gets like so many views on the internet. This book is like a monster in the book world, and I think it has defined a whole new genre of books that we're seeing. Like Fourth Wing is because Fourth Wing wouldn't exist if it wasn't for ACOTAR. Like there are all these books that wouldn't have existed if it wasn't for ACOTAR. It is like the Twilight of the modern day, as if Twilight isn't modern day anymore, which is so upsetting.
Yeah.
But like it really is. It's like it changed a whole trajectory of books.
Yeah.
So and it made this whole new genre of new adult. Because when it first came out, it was a young adult. It was branded as a young adult novel, branded for like kids like 13 to 18 or whatever, which is nuts because there's a lot of sexual content in it and it should not be for kids. And that's why I think when they realized they needed to rebrand and shift the audience, and that there was this gap in audience of girls, like women now, who were Twilight fans and are looking for something that kind of gives them the same feeling, but are older. Like they have grown up and are okay or more interested in some of those more mature themes. So I think that's interesting. I think ACOTAR was the first one to do that.
Yeah, I would say like since Twilight, it kind of like broke, boundaries that were set before that. So I think that true story that like why there's like stories of like people putting ACOTAR within the YA sections of books stores, and it definitely should not be like your kids should not. There's like really
kids should not be reading this book. Yeah. I had like my like 17, not even she's not even 17, my like 14-year-old cousin at the time be like, should I read this book? And I'm like, absolutely not. I cannot condone that. Like, you should not read this.
Yeah.
Like, it's not for kids. So like the fact that it was in, it just didn't have a place for so long. They didn't know where to put it. And it literally just created its own genre that was probably just like on its way, because all of us who were Twilight girlies or just like that genre, we were young during that time, have now aged, but are still looking for books that feel that way, but are older.
Yeah,
and that's
aged with us a little bit. I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
But one thing I wanted to say too is that I think the timing of this book release was like helped it, like, because I think it grew during the pandemic when TikTok really went off, and now people can like market it. Like, she doesn't have to pay for a lot of this marketing. Like, we're doing it for her, and like it did get people back into reading. Like, I know for me, it got me back into reading. Our friend Haley got her back into reading, and now like she's now into like smut.
She's like full blown into it.
Yeah, full blown into deeper than we ever got.
Yeah, I'm like, I can't do that.
Go, girl.
But it's teach their own, I guess. It's true. It got a huge, because it was already really popular when I like read it back in like 2017. It was already like one of the most popular books on the internet. And then TikTok exploded it. It just got a whole, to your point, a whole new audience. And what I think TikTok did though is it like focused on the smut in a way. Like, I've talked about like why I don't like that before. And I've seen people be disappointed by the first 3 books because they're like, it's not that smutty. And I'm like, no, it's actually not that smutty. It just has smut in it.
Yeah.
And then that's why I think like the 5th book like gave into the smut hype, because that's what people were asking for. Right. But like that's my controversial
It wasn't
opinion.
like erotica, and I think people were expecting erotica.
Yeah.
It wasn't like erotica forward.
No, it's not. It's like, it's just a character driven book. Whether or not it was a good character driven book or a good plot book, that's up to everyone's own opinion.
Yeah.
But like, it wasn't a smut forward book. But then it was like advertised that way, especially on TikTok, and they're like, "This is all smut," and you're like, "No, it's not actually." Like,
surprise,
surprise, it's actually not.
So we're gonna move on to a discussion of the first book, and so we again had to look up the plot points. We don't remember.
What is the plot?
What is the plot?
What is the plot?
What is the plot? So a lot of these questions, again, thank you to that website that we looked to for those questions, because we don't remember.
No.
So, Olivia, first question. ACOTAR is loosely based on the fairy tale Beauty and the Beast. Do you find the similarity with the classic book to be helpful in getting into the story, or was it distracting?
No, I think it's helpful. I always think it's good. Like, one of my favorite books is the Lunar Chronicles. And I think we've talked about the Lunar Chronicles many times on this podcast. But I think what that series did really well is it uses the classic fairy tales and a twist on them. So you're able to like follow along, but it's different enough that it feels familiar but surprising. And I think that succeeded here too. Like, I think the like familiar but surprising is always good. It's hard to like get something brand new. You know, it's really hard to create something. I mean, there's nothing original in the world anyway, to be honest. So I think, I just didn't find it distracting. I think it's always helpful to like use a story that people are familiar with and like add an additional or interesting layer to it. I think it's a good way to like get an audience and to build on a story that we all like are kind of bought into already. So yeah, I liked it.
I had the same reaction. I think that because my first reaction right away, I remember texting, was like, "This is like Beauty and the Beast."
Yeah.
Again, meets Hunger Games. So I thought it was helpful. You know.
Yeah.
The new writer and new book that I didn't hear about before. So.
Exactly. Yeah, they have to do that to like get you to read their book. To be honest, because like, and I just think it's a good way to write a book. Like, use a story we all know, and like get creative. You know? It's like, it works. Yeah. So Feyre starts having feelings for Tamlin. So the story goes, as we know, that like Tamlin. Like, Feyre murders a wolf for her family, get food for her family. The wolf ends up being a magical fairy. Tamlin comes in and demands that Feyre like comes in with him as like payment for killing this wolf. So Feyre starts having feelings for Tamlin fairly soon after arriving in Prythian, and ends up like being her first love. What do you think was an initial attraction that she couldn't see his face? Technically her jailer at first. How do her perceptions of him change over the course of the book? Like, so the fact that she loved her jailer, how do we feel about that?
I know there's some toxicity here with
Yeah.
like Stockholm syndrome. And I remember like you knew it would happen though.
Yeah.
Because of Beauty and the Beast. You know what I mean? You just, and you know it's a fantasy book, you just kind of like suspend your belief. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that it was odd, but we knew it would happen.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not surprising by any means. Yeah. You just knew it was coming. So what was her attraction to him if she couldn't see his face? What do you think it was?
And also I remember that like at this point she hates fairies.
Yeah,
right?
That's true. Yeah, you're
so
right.
I think a lot of it was just like the education piece that probably was like, and like being in a house, like because they were like extremely poor when this started. I think like being in like the castle and him taking care of her, you know what I mean? I think that helped. Yeah. Being the Travis Kelce to her Taylor Swift a little bit. He was playing that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he took care of her in Prithian. So like, and taught her to read.
Taught her to read.
Yeah, like that's a big deal.
A man
taught her to read. Like, oh, good for him. Good for Tamlin.
We can't read on our own. We need men to teach us.
We need men to teach us how to read. Yeah. That's true. So like, yeah, he treated her well. That's fair. How do you think her perceptions of him changed over the course of the book? Do you remember?
Man, it's so hard to remember.
It's so hard.
It's so hard to remember. Yeah. What do you think? Yeah.
What do I think? I don't know. I mean, she was like, yeah, as she learned, she liked the world. I remember that she just like grew to like the fairy world. Yeah. So I think she just like grew to think of them as more human, even though, but she just grew to like accept fairies more.
Yeah, that helped.
Yeah, that helped rather than like the scary beings that they were.
Mm-hmm. So we do get to meet Rhysand, and again, spoiler, you should know by now. We're gonna talk about spoilers. Rhysand turns out to be not a baddie. Tamlin's a baddie, and Tamlin's a baddie. And so Rhysand is High Lord of the Night. How am I going to introduce? I'm so sorry. Okay, let me ask the question. Rhysand is High Lord of the Night Court, but he still saves Farah at the Great Right Party, and then again when she is sick in the jail cell. What sense did you have of his motivations? Where did he seem to fit in the story? Given he is made to look like the bad guy, were you confused by his help?
So I'm biased in this, in that I knew, because I read Throne of Glass before ACOTAR, I went in knowing about the Sarah J. Maas like twist. Right? I knew that like the Rhysand, I knew that there was something probably going to happen with Rhysand. I don't know if I knew fully. So my perception of him was like, of course he's helping her. This is probably gonna be something later. I believe that's what I thought. I don't think it was a surprise to me.
Okay.
So what about you? What was your thoughts?
This is a great segue to our next question too, about our thoughts on what they look like, because I did fall for the baddie.
You did?
Like situation. Yeah, I hadn't heard about the twist.
Fair.
And so I just took it for face value. I was like, okay, he's gonna be the bad guy. And then so I like dark features, and I was like, who do I not like? Ben Shapiro. And so I imagined this like short insecure man as Rhysand, and I had to unlearn that. Everyone,
to unlearn it
for the following books, specifically book 2. So
it's tough.
I know, but I know you have specific thoughts on how he looked.
I mean,
what are your thoughts on how he was described?
So I think there's a lot of criticisms that we can make of Sarah J. Maas, and I think one of the things, so he's described, like I looked up his description. So he's described as like having short blue-black hair, raven feathers, violet eyes. Okay. He has a tan complexion. However, he was once pale because he was forced under the mountain for so long and gained back his coloring after spending time in Valaris. So like as an artist, like, it's very important to like skin color, obviously, and with good reason, is a very like touchy subject, right? We want to make sure we're capturing people correctly. No issues with that. I just think it's like this. I think the descriptions of Rhysand are interesting in that they speak to like an American view of race, that like race is only by skin color. Your ethnicity is only by skin color. And if you are dark skinned, then you are of a different ethnicity. And that is like the only thing that we bring to the table. And it's like, we've seen this in other books, like Xaden in Fourth Wing. There is no other reason that he would be of a different ethnicity, but he has tawny skin. So he is a brown man, you know, like, and it's just like, we need to challenge authors to like do more than just like make somebody tan and say that that's enough, right? Like that is not like, race is more than just that. Your ethnicity is more than just that. Like, because like we were talking about this earlier, like I am Egyptian, my family is from Egypt, but I am white. Like I look white.
Yeah.
But so it's like there's more to it than just your skin color. Like it's more complex. Like it's such a Western and American view because all we see is like black and white. And we're like, if you're black, then you are a different race. If you're white, you are not. And it's like that is not how the rest of the world works. It's just not how it works.
Yeah.
It's way more complex than that. So I just thought it was interesting that he was described as pale.
Yeah.
And then it's like, no, actually he's tan because he was just under the mountain for so long.
Yeah.
I'm like, really?
It's like a J.K. Rowling cop-out to like add minorities to the story. You know what I mean? Without actually saying it. Like, say they're a black man, say they're a brown man, say whatever you need to. But like, yeah, don't like make it just like ambiguous.
Yeah,
you know?
It's ambiguous. And you had a good point about like your skin color because you're darker than me. Like about how if you're not in the sun for so long, you don't suddenly become pale.
Yeah.
Like, that's not how that works.
Her excuse, Sarah J. Maas's excuse, was that, like, since Rhysand was underneath the mountain, he became a pale white man.
Yeah.
But, like, if I hadn't seen the sun, I would still be pale. I would still have melanin.
Yeah.
I would still be brown, but I would be a little bit paler. And because I still have melanin. So.
Yeah. It's, like, not how skin color necessarily works either.
The science isn't there.
Yeah. And again, like, there's more to your, like, there's more to a person's ethnicity and like background than just their skin color.
Yes.
That is not all there is. So like you want to see more. Like I want to like Rhysand is a brown man. Great. Tell me why. Like what is it about that's different than like the white fae? Like why would it matter? You know? Like not just his skin color because it's like that's not all there is. That's such a binary view of race. It's just really interesting to me.
And then also later on, like Castian and Asriel are depicted as brown men, but we do see a lot of the art depicting them as like Caucasian men. So it's just bizarre. I've seen the difference in the artwork, and so I think Sarah J. Maas could have been more descriptive.
Yeah,
I think that's a good critique, a fair critique.
It is a fair critique. And like, why are they brown men? Like, why are they like, where are they from? What does that mean in this world? Like, why, like, is there, like, what's different about them than like from where they came from versus the not brown fae? Like, I don't know. Like, I just don't understand it. It's just like, we just need to like challenge people more and to not just like make brown people, like just saying their skin is brown as like the cop out to actually doing work around what it means.
Building the world.
Building the world,
which is difficult as we know from other books.
Yes,
so.
Just interesting.
Yeah.
Man.
This isn't necessarily a question, but like I just thought it was interesting that there's so much emphasis on Farrah's painting. I just think like she's just flat as a character. And it goes into like, we had a whole episode about talking about tropes. She's just like the like damsel in distress almost, like who turns into like a powerful woman, but she's still described as like dainty and like into art and like she's a little bit flat, and I feel like she doesn't have a lot of dimension, and like so I think like Sarah J. Maas just added the painting as like a hobby.
Just like, well, how do we make her interesting?
Have a paint. Loves to paint, and it keeps showing up throughout the books, and I just think it's like that's all she has. Why does she like painting? Like I'm sure they talk about it a little bit, but like it's just silly.
It is silly. It goes back to like we say these things about people like they are brown, they like to paint. Tell me why. Like let's go one step further. Like give me more. Like build the character, build their like motivations a little bit more. But again, that's not necessarily what this book is for. This book is candy. It's candy. Described. Yeah, it's candy. I love candy. I love candy. That's true.
So the next question is about when Farrah and Rhysand and Tamlin end up going underneath the mountain.
All of them.
The whole Amarantha situation, which again is hard to remember. We had to read up about this. We don't remember exactly what happened. But Farrah goes through the trials. This is where the Hunger Games situation comes in. Hunger Games trope. And so my question is, what are our thoughts around the riddle? And did we see the like solution of it like being love? Did we see that coming? And I'll read the riddle really quick. There are those who seek me a lifetime, but never we meet, and those I kiss, but who trample me beneath ungrateful feet. At times I seem to favor the clever and the fair, but I bless all those who are brave enough to dare. By large, my ministrations are soft-handed and sweet, but scorned I become a difficult beast to defeat. For though each of my strikes land a powerful blow, when I kill I do it slow. Sarah J. Maas, the poet.
It is poetry.
Yeah.
Snaps.
Snaps.
We do snaps. For
Jazz
Sarah J.
music.
Maas. Yeah, like jazz music.
I knew from the beginning that like the solution would be love. To like
Yeah.
come on, use your brain.
Yeah. Like use your brain. Let's
Yeah.
think about
But
this.
she is illiterate, so maybe she didn't know.
That's fair.
You know what I mean?
But she does figure it out.
Yeah.
I mean, because of course she does.
Yeah.
Because Amarantha was fooled by a 19-year-old illiterate girl who doesn't think she's pretty.
That's all you need to take down like an all-powerful fae.
Fairy queen. Yeah, that's all you need. I don't remember again what I thought, but it seems pretty obvious. It's love.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
I think in the book, like Lucian or Rhysand had to tell her because she couldn't read it.
Really?
Yeah, I would think like
I don't remember.
Rhysand got into her brain, or Lucian had to tell her. We don't remember.
I would think it was Rhysand because Rhysand could speak to her.
Yeah, so probably Rhysand.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, again, like Amarantha is a cool villain. Actually, I think she was kind of cool, but not very smart. Not very smart. She got defeated by a 19-year-old.
Yeah,
who knew the riddle was love.
I thought she was interesting, but there wasn't enough detail. Yes. I wanted more backstory that we didn't get, and then the whole Cauldron War. They end up giving a little bit backstory and adding more, but like I wanted more about Amarantha and like the history, and like they've obviously been around for more than decades, centuries, and it's just like there was so little said about.
There is so little.
Yeah.
Why? I don't even remember how Amarantha relates to the Cauldron Wars.
Can't remember.
Is it called the Cauldron Wars?
That's what we're calling it. You heard it first. Fangirl feels the Cauldron Wars.
The Cauldron Wars. Yeah, I don't remember because I know she is related to like the King Hybern. I just remember that name, but I couldn't tell you much else about it.
Yeah,
like the Cauldron Wars. I don't know. Yeah,
no idea.
Yeah, it's tough. It's a tough one. Remembering these books is tough. We don't remember. But yeah, I do think she was interesting. She's a good villain.
Yeah.
But not enough of her and not enough detail.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, to your point.
That's jam.
Yeah. So how do we feel about the Chosen One? The Chosen One trope is basically all of ACOTAR, to be honest, and later on. So like she gets saved by being made into a fairy herself and receiving like all the powers of all the High Lords. Every single one of them like gives them like all their powers. And basically she becomes like the most powerful fairy in the world almost. I think so. So did you see that twist coming? And did it surprise you? And how did it feel? How did you feel while you were reading it? What were your thoughts?
I didn't see it coming, but also I thought it was a cop-out. I always think, again, the Chosen One trope doesn't always work. We talked about this, again, plugging our own podcast. Our trope episode I thought was pretty good.
Yeah.
We did a lot of research.
It was a good one, yeah.
But because like we think it worked for Harry Potter. There's certain times where it does work. I don't think it worked here, where it's just used as a device to solve like issues with the plot. You know what I mean? Like this is going to solve everything.
Yeah.
Whereas with Harry Potter, there was like nuance and like history and backstory that they put in there.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
What about you? What did you think about, and did you see it coming?
I don't think I saw it coming. I don't even know why that, like, I don't know, like, why did it happen? Yeah. Like, I understand, like, I was surprised when she died. I do remember that. I was surprised when she got killed, like, at the end of, like, the third trial, and Amarantha killed her. And I guess, like, it made sense so that she could be with Tamlin. I remember thinking that was probably the reason, was like, oh, now she can be with Tamlin because she's a fairy and not a human. But her being, like, the all-powerful, like, fairy that she is, yeah, it just feels like a cop-out. It's true. It's like, why couldn't she just be, like, a normal fairy? I don't know.
Come on.
Yeah, but it's fine. I mean, it didn't bother me necessarily because, again, you recognize that this is, like, candy. You don't think that hard about it. Like,
you can get upset for 2 seconds and be like, all right, it's not that deep. Yeah, Sarah J. Maas.
It's not that deep. It's one of those things like, yeah, you don't think that hard. Like, as you're reading it, you enter this like mindset of like, you know what you're reading.
Yeah.
So you just really don't question it.
Yeah.
You know, you don't think that hard about it. It's like, just like your brain enters this like mode.
Yeah.
It's like, don't think mode.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's like a bag of Jolly Ranchers. It's good for the 5 minutes that you can consume it.
It's good.
It's not nutritiously good for you.
No.
But it's a fun time.
Yeah.
It's a fun time.
I enjoyed it. I had a great time.
You'd recommend it to friends.
Yeah. It was like, of course I'd recommend Jolly Ranchers to friends. Like,
but then they're like, would I consume this forever? No.
You shouldn't.
It's good for the moment.
And I do think it's better written than like Fourth Wing. Not to shit on Fourth Wing.
We did talk about this. And not to shit on anyone, like we're just being critical a little bit.
we're just fans.
Yeah, we're fans of both. We just went into both thinking that they might be better written. No, that's all.
Yeah. I like I've said this before. I don't actually think this is badly written. I don't think it's that bad. I just think it's, like I said, she doesn't have an editor. But this book, I don't remember it being as bad as like the other ones. I think her later books, she really needed some cutting down. But I don't remember this book being particularly long or feeling that way. But it's also been like 7 years since I read it. So I don't even know. Yeah.
So last question, talking about the end of the book. By the end of the book, Farron knows she will get to live for the rest of her life with Tamlin.
Fair.
Pardon? Didn't see that coming. But with the occasional visit to Rysand as a part of the deal for him using his dark powers to save her, I thought that was weird. I thought that was a weird like decision. I'm like, why did that happen?
Yeah.
Does this feel like a happy ending? Did she do the right thing in accepting his help? Again, I did think it was weird. Like, why? Because again, you don't know he's a goodie in Tamlin's baddie. So you know what I mean? I feel like the twist. I didn't see the twist coming in for the second book, but at the same time, I thought this was an odd decision to have her like go for a week of part of a month.
A week of every month. Is it a week every month?
I think to Rysand, to Valaris. But I just thought it was a strange. I thought there were different things that could have come out of that decision. Like that would benefit him. I didn't see the benefit to him, I guess.
No.
So,
well, I mean, you kind of figure that he likes her by the end of this book because he like saves her from the weird fairies. Do you remember? Like are they called the Calamine? I think that's what they were.
No idea.
And she like gets drunk.
Too deep.
Yeah, it is too deep. But there's like this. I remember this scene actually where she like gets like kind of drunk at this like fairy party and he like helps her out. So he's like always like the villain, but he always kind of helps her out at the same time, which I know like in later books he explains it. But I like knew just because of those like pieces, I was like, obviously he's going to become a bigger deal later. And yeah, I mean, it didn't surprise me that this was probably going to happen. Whether the whole week every month was a random thing, it's like I don't know why this was the decision that was made. That seems strange, but like obviously he liked her. Like I could tell that much. Yeah. So that would make sense. That he would like want her to come to him. Like creepy, but it's fine. It's okay.
Strange.
It is strange.
It's odd decisions, but again, don't think too hard.
No, we don't think too hard about it.
Yeah, you just move on.
Yeah. You're like, okay, of course he does. Of course he wants to like kidnap her once a week.
Fair.
Once a month.
Yeah, you start to just make sense. Like make it make sense, you know?
In the world of fairies, I guess it does make sense. You're like, that's okay.
Fair. Yeah.
And Tamlin's cool with it. Well, he's not cool with it, but you're just like, okay.
Yeah, move on.
Move on. All right, cool. Like we just accept it. And she has like the tattoo on her hand now, the like eye thing.
Oh yeah.
That's fine.
The tattoos again.
I was upset by the tattoos.
Yeah.
Because anything that's permanent on my body upsets me greatly. Like it really upsets me. So imagine having like an eye. It was because I remember there's like an eye on her like palm. I think that's what they describe.
Entirely.
Yeah. No, then it's like black shadows on her hands. I'm like, I don't like this. I would be really upset by that. I feel like fairy powers could do better.
They could.
Yeah.
Go beyond that.
Like we don't need permanent tattoos, please. Like, no thanks.
Thank you so much for listening and watching this episode. We really appreciate it. Again, we're Fangirl Feels. My name's Tanya, but I'm Cassian today.
My name's Olivia, and I'm Azriel today. Spoiler again.
Spoiler alerts at the end. Thank you so much for watching this episode about the first book of Court Thorns and Roses. We're going to keep making videos about the subsequent books. Pay attention because the next book is our favorite.
Everyone's favorite. It's everyone's favorite.
Has to be.
I actually know one person who it wasn't their favorite. One person preferred this book.
Don't listen to our podcast then.
Yeah,
your friend.
My friend.
No longer a friend.
We love her.
No.
She's my friend. But it's true. She liked this book better. So one person did.
All right.
Yeah.
Follow, like, subscribe. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all the podcast networks. We're also on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Fangirl Feels Pod. We would appreciate a support and a share. Thank you so much, and stay tuned.
Stay tuned. We dressed up and everything for
this took at least an hour and a half of production.
It really did.
Not even accounting for editing at this moment.
No.
Like, editing's going to take a while. So
it will.
Appreciate.
Should we should we have our bat wings fly as we end?
Yeah.
And say, okay.
Some
like this.
Intro.
Yeah.
Bye!
It's so ridiculous.
Look like a chicken.
We do look like chickens.
Not bats.
Yeah, bye. Well, these wings. I feel like we're an insult to their wings, but that wing.